Heart and Soul listeners. This is Terry, the host of Respectable Sins. We have been thinking about the subtle sins in our lives. Specifically, we are trying to learn how to deal with the sin in our lives that we need to tolerate. We are doing that by discussing the book by Jerry Bridges, Respectable Sins, Confronting the Sins We Tolerate. There is a Korean proverb that says, if your cousin buys land, your stomach aches. Maybe you disagree. You might think, no, I wouldn't feel upset or jealous if my cousin buys land. I would be happy. Granted, there may be few of us who would feel this way. However, many of us would tend to agree with this proverb. As you might surmise, the essence of this proverb is not about the cousin. Let's rephrase the proverb slightly and see how we feel about it. Suppose the saying went something like this. If a rich businessman buys land, your stomach aches. The chances are people would not be so upset when a rich businessman buys land. However, if my cousin buys land, then we would likely think, why not me? Or why can't I buy land? When we do, we would be saying these things out of envy. Today, we'll focus on a sin called envy. Jerry begins by sharing his own experience. He talks about a friend who is also a pastor and an author like him. Then Jerry mentions the difference between them. While this friend is invited to give talks from all over the world and he gets to travel a lot, Jerry does not get those invitations. One day, observing his friend's frequent invitations to speak in different countries, Jerry confesses that he found himself thinking, hey, I've written as many books as this friend. Why don't I get invitations like he does? At that moment, Jerry admits that he became subject to the sin of envy. Jerry explains envy as conscious pain and resentment at the good fortune of others, coupled with the desire to possess the same advantage. He emphasizes that envy doesn't occur randomly. It happens under two conditions. One, the other person is considered equal in many aspects, and two, the other person is ahead in an area you value highly. In fact, the personal situation Jerry describes involving his friend meets both of these two conditions. That friend was a pastor and an author just like Jerry was, and he was receiving invitations for visits from various countries and having an opportunity to share his thoughts with others, which Jerry also valued highly. This personal observation by Jerry takes us back to the Korean proverb we mentioned earlier. We would consider our cousin to be equal to us, and we would also like a piece of land, just as he or she would. It makes sense. Think about those instances when you envy someone. Envy rarely happens if a good thing happens to someone very different from us. It usually occurs when someone similar to us accomplishes what we desire, what we want to have, and what we want to achieve. Envy is the desiring something that doesn't belong to us. Jerry looked at his friend, gaining recognition in the same field and seemingly making more significant impact as an author. That triggered a sense of envy in Jerry. When did you feel envious about someone? How did it start in your heart? Based on Jerry's two conditions, that envy likely happened when someone not different than you somehow managed to accomplish something you valued highly, like meeting a wonderful spouse while you were still looking for that special someone. When someone else's child, who doesn't seem as bright as yours, received an award your child didn't. When someone you did not particularly admire socially seemed to be accomplishing more than you. And when someone you considered equal to you in many aspects lives in a better house, drives a better car, and wears better clothes than you. We see in the Old Testament how King Saul succumbed to the sin of envy concerning David. It began when Saul heard the Israelite woman singing, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Even if it were true, the truth didn't matter. Saul was the king of Israel, yet people were elevating David above him. This envy led Saul to develop hatred toward David and to contemplate murdering him. The Bible sometimes translates envy as coveting or jealousy. Whether it's envy, coveting, or jealousy, the Bible calls it a sin. Galatians 5:19-21 tells us, the acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity and debauchery, idolatry, and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, self-ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. Jerry articulates two fundamental reasons why envy is a sin. First, this sense of envy is equivalent to denying God's sovereignty. When we feel envy about someone, that represents our inability to acknowledge that the person may be receiving a gift from God. Second, that shows our failure to realize that believers are of one body. Envy arises from not understanding that we are supposed to work together, not compete. That is why envy or jealousy is considered a sin in the Bible. To overcome envy, Jerry tells us first to recognize God's sovereignty, and second, to train ourselves to eliminate the sense of competition among believers. Our purpose is not to compete or to be ahead of other believers, but to know that our goal is to do our best in the task assigned to us. Envy arises from a desire for the world to happen as we wish it to. If you think about it, you would agree that type of desire is rather absurd. A world does not happen as we covet. A world that happens according to our own desires would be a wicked world that we would not be able to live in. God didn't place people similar to us next to us to compete but to collaborate. May we learn to serve each other with compassion rather than envy. This concludes today's episode of Respectable Sins.